Robert Hadden was stripped of his medical license but served no prison time after pleading guilty to a criminal sexual act in 2016. Marissa Hoechstetter, a Northampton resident, was the first woman to publicly accuse him of sexual assault. But when she raised those concerns to Manhattan District Attorney Vance, she said she was largely brushed aside. Hoechstetter has led a campaign to unseat Vance called the Reform the Sex Crimes Unit, which she spoke with me about in the studio.
As someone harmed by the district attorney's office in Manhattan, I really felt compelled to share my story and reveal a pattern of behavior by that office of giving preferential treatment to wealthy, connected perpetrators. Since I'm not anonymous and my name and story is out there, I hear from women almost daily who have encountered challenges reporting sex crimes, either to that office or other offices across the country. And I'm really committed to making sure that law enforcement takes these allegations and reports seriously.
Yeah, I should say, just on balance, that District Attorney Vance has said in other published media reports that disagrees with your perspective that this was something that was extended to wealthy, privileged people, and they think that there's been no wrongdoing in regard to your specific case or other women who are harmed by former Dr. Hadden. So that's the DA's perspective. I saw on your website that you have said that when you chose to report the sexual abuse that you were subjected to the DA's office in 2015, that choice changed the course of your life. So you hadn't been an advocate before what happened?
Correct. I mean, I advocated generally for, issues related to feminism and women's experience, generally. But I consider it really a position of privilege that I had not had to have an encounter with law enforcement or really had to deal with these issues. And I really went forward to that office believing that I was doing the right thing and that someone would support me. I was told that they believed me, but they did not act upon my accusation. And then, really a lot more became revealed to me over time, campaign contributions, parts of the plea deal that we've taken great issue with. So it did change my life. I mean, I've now committed to this advocacy. I spend a lot of time and my own money and energy really committed to learning and to making reform. This is about my personal story, but it's also about making reform to help other women.
Yeah, to your point about reform, a law has recently been enacted in New York City specifically that redacts the names of care providers who've had their medical license revoked. And this was the case on your twins' birth certificate. Mm-hmm. So that name is now redacted from that document. When I looked at my own Massachusetts long-form birth certificate, I did not have a doctor's name. So is that something
Massachusetts does not list it.
Unique to New York City then?
Yeah, New York State, and actually a bill is now before it's passed the Assembly and it's in front of the Senate in New York State. The information is there not for any legal purpose. It simply says name of attendant at delivery, and I really felt that this person did not get to remain in a position of privilege in my life and my daughter's lives, and I thought it would be an administrative fix to simply remove it because it serves no purpose, and we ended up having to legislate it. I think it says a lot about how, as a society, we give doctors this incredible reverence and position of privilege, and that is something that they are then able to use against us and take advantage of as a patient alone in a room with a doctor who abuses a patient and takes advantage of that position they have.
Were you surprised to learn differences state to state, that why one state would feel it was important to have a doctor's name on a birth certificate but another wouldn't?
Yeah, I mean, it's so many things like that are state by state. I mean, the crimes against me, how they are categorized in New York State versus how they would have been categorized in Massachusetts are different. The statutes of limitation that would allow criminal or civil action are different. So I think many advocates, you run up against that when you start advocating. And and trying to understand what resources are available to you. Statutes of limitation and definitions of sex crimes are very confusing and often very nuanced and hard to understand. And so you as a victim trying to figure out really even what happened to you can sometimes be really difficult.
I should say that you currently live in Northampton, but at the time you did live in New York and were a resident of New York City. Something else, you've written for Ms. Magazine with Professor Carrie Baker, who's been on the program before, and one of the topics that you covered looked at the fact that it's not mandatory for a second person to be in a room observing if a woman's at the gynecologist. I was surprised by that. I feel like when I think back on my examinations, I've always had a second person in there. That's not mandated by law to have that second person observing?
It depends. Again, sometimes in some healthcare systems will have their own policies and procedures that will require that. I think ACOG, which is the professional organization of obstetricians and gynecologists, they recently redid their recommendations to include that. The one thing I would say about that is that having a person in the room does not stop the abuse from happening. And so it's surely a barrier and can be helpful to protect you. And as a patient, it is well within your rights to request that someone else be there, either a nurse or another staff member or a family member. But I think if we've learned anything from, say, the Nassar case in Michigan.
Former Dr. Larry Nassar.
Correct. There were parents in the room. There were people in the room. So it's quick to say that that would solve the problem, and it surely can help. We want to protect people, but it's not, the only thing.
Something else you wrote, and I was frankly shocked by this, it's not mandatory that sex crimes by a healthcare worker be reported as criminal behavior. You wrote that in 2019. Is that still true?
It depends. There's mandated reporting. So I know the most about New York State. If a peer or an administrator believes that there was inappropriate behavior, there is mandated reporting to, say, the state medical board, not necessarily to law enforcement, but to the state medical board. But there's no penalty for not doing so. And so you see time and again, and this is part of what is being revealed in our civil lawsuit against my abuser's employer, that they knew there were allegations dating back for decades, but they have no incentive to report that. I think it's a problem. And because medicine is so unique, and there are often legitimate reasons for someone's hands to be on or in your body, we give the deference to the medical professional. Most cases of sexual assault in medicine, you end up seeing them resolved under medical malpractice. It's medical malpractice attorneys who will pursue. Law enforcement often does not believe the survivors, which is basically what we saw in our case. So it's complicated, but there are many sort of loopholes that allow people to not appreciate it as a sex crime the way you might if you said you were, raped on the street by a stranger.
Something else that you've advocated for is that women really know their own rights and understand them to the best of your ability. And I've heard you also say that sometimes that's legalese and it's really complicated. But would you suggest that women, if there is a question, to raise it at that time, to just raise that question? Yes.
Trust your instincts. Trust red flags. In my own experience, looking back, there were a number of red flags that were really grooming behavior, boundary testing, so inappropriate questions. A doctor should never be doing something to your body that they can't explain, and they should be explaining it while they're doing it. So if they need to touch you somewhere, why and for what purpose? Again, it's a little bit of a position of privilege to say, just don't go back and go see someone else. Many people are not in that position, right? They have
insurance might prohibit it.
Right, they have to be somewhere. So definitely report. One thing that I think is important for people to know about is the state medical board is a resource, and often there's no statute. So you might not want to deal with law enforcement, but state medical boards are required to investigate any accusation, and often there's no statute for doing that. So that's a resource for people who might want to just make sure that this person doesn't continue to practice. there are other resources available for people.